I'm standing in my driveway, that first weekend after New Year's, watching my whole family turn down the cul-de-sac into a motorsports parade. Trucks idle inside a line, trailers sit loaded with a brand new Razor and side-by-sides, all shiny plastic and knobby tires meant for tearing through the mountain snow. Kids weave in between them like we're heading to a theme park, instead of some kind of frozen campsite. Jake slaps the fender of his truck. "You ready or what?" "About as ready as I'm gonna be," I say back. Winter camping is something we've all done for years now. If the temperatures aren't too deadly and the roads aren't completely buried, we pack half our houses and then head up the mountain. This year the snow came a little early, 2 feet high, but the weather is mild enough to keep that tradition alive. Everybody's excited and everybody's over-prepared. I finish checking the straps on our side-by-side. Erin stands over by the passenger door, bundled up tightly, breath curling off in the cold. "You packed the emergency kit, right?" she asked me. "Yup, first aid, blankets, flares, heaters in the tote with the propane." She nods but then keeps staring at the mountains, a gray spine behind the houses. "Roads were plowed yesterday, right?" "So they say." Of course, the kids were already arguing about who gets the first ride when we reach camp. My parents, my sisters, their spouses, they're all packing coolers, snacking firewood, debating coffee versus beer ratios, like we aren't bringing a ton of both. It's supposed to be this nice big family weekend, controlled chaos. We've used the same campsite for years and years now. We know the same turnoffs, the washouts, the meadow where we dig out this fire pit into the snow. It's all pretty routine. Jake tugs on his gloves. "You got some chains if the road turns nasty?" "Yeah, they're in the toolbox," I say. "You think we'll need them?" "Well, that's up to the mountain to decide, isn't it?" It's a joke, but it doesn't land with me, and I shake it off. I start the truck up, raise my voice so the whole convoy hears me. "Same drill as always. I lead, Jake runs rear, keep your distance. We regroup at the cattle guard." The engines rumble to their agreement. Erin buckles in. "Last chance to bail," she says over to me, and I pull out anyway, our caravan falling in behind me, heading straight toward the mountain and whatever's waiting inside those trees. We hit the dirt road just past that cattle guard, where the snow starts climbing in these uneven ridges along the shoulders. Our convoy regroups like we always do, engines idling, exhaust rolling around the tires, spirits are still really high. I take point again and lead us deeper off into the mountains. The snow gets thicker, the trees lean in, heavy with frost, narrowing the road to a single white corridor. A few miles up, I started seeing some fresh tire tracks, wide and aggressive tread marks, punching through the snow right ahead of us. Probably some other campers or off-roaders. It's nothing too unusual. But then I catch some movement off in the trees, an old dark truck that was mud-caked, loud, and cuts through this uneven marked trail to our right, tearing through the pines. Whoever's driving it is hammering it like they're trying to break something. I lift my hand off the wheel and wave, but the truck doesn't wave back, doesn't even acknowledge me. It just slows, stops, and then watches us roll past. Erin shifts beside me. "Well, that's comforting." When we take the next bend, the truck pulls out behind our convoy and starts following. I didn't announce it yet, but I watched in my mirrors. It stays close enough to make its point, but far enough to pretend that it isn't doing what it's doing. Finally, we reach the turnoff to our usual winter spot, this nice open meadow tucked between tall stands of timber. I swing in and everybody falls behind, piling out to check the snow depth and pick a tent spot. And that's when that same truck rolls into the meadow behind us. 2 guys inside, both leaning out their window, wearing the same pissed off expression. "We were headed here," the driver calls out. "This is our site." Jake then stepped forward immediately. "Yeah, that's not how it works. First come, first serve, man. You just watched us roll in." The passenger shakes his head. "We told people that we were taking this spot. Ask around. Everybody knows that we use this one." "Look, there's a whole mountain behind you," I say. "We're here with kids. Let's not make this into a thing, you know?" They stare us down for a long moment, and something smug creeps into their faces. But they back out, spit gravel, and drive away. We watch until they're finally gone, but that tension remains. It doesn't dissipate. but I forced myself to shake it off. We set up camp, pop some tents, and dig out a fire pit. We unload all the toys immediately. After a while, Aaron and I take the side-by-side out for a short loop. The trails out here are beautiful, quiet and bright, very untouched. And for a little while, I legitimately did forget all about the drama. But when we return, everybody else is rolling back too, and the mood has definitely changed. Jake marches right up to me, helmet in hand. "Those guys found us." "Found you? What do you mean?" "They cut us off at the ridge trail, kept circling through bottles, full ones, I might add, tried to run the kid's razor into the wash." My stomach dropped. "Is anybody hurt?" "No, but..." He doesn't even finish that sentence because an engine then roars through the tree line, getting closer at a speed that promises injury, perhaps even death. The truck then bursts out of the woods, right through our camp. It misses a tent by inches, plows through the edge of a fire pit, sending coals up in this spray of sparks. Kids scream and dive for cover, adults scatter, and somebody yanks a toddler behind a trailer. I shout at them, waving both arms. Jake's beside me doing the same. The truck fishtails, spins, almost clips our gear trailer, then guns it again for another loop, before it then rips back into the forest. Silence hangs around us. Everybody erupts though, checking kids, grabbing gear, yelling over one another. I look at Jake. "We cannot let them get another run like that." "Agreed." We load the kids into the trucks and the SUVs, lock them inside. Adults form this loose perimeter. Aaron and my sisters gather anything that can be turned into a projectile or flattened. My dad keeps saying that we should go, but the light is dropping fast and navigating the descent in the dark with the trailers is a gamble of its own. I try calling the Rangers, but of course, no signal, so I try again, and of course, still nothing. The sun bleeds out behind the ridge, the temperature is dropping fast, and the woods are going dark fast too. The whole mountain feels like it's closing in around us. Jake then mutters to me, "If they come back in the dark..." "They will," I say, pretending otherwise is kind of pointless. We stoke the fire, get lamps set up, and try to look organized, but nobody's relaxed. Nobody's sitting. Everybody keeps glancing toward that tree line, like the darkness itself is watching us. Because those guys didn't leave, and we knew damn well they're going to come back at any moment. Night then settles over the mountain. The fire threw this weak circle of light across the snow, but everything beyond it looked like a wall of moving black. Nobody was even talking anymore. Nobody was pretending this was normal. I kept my Micro 9 tucked into my jacket pocket. I've never really been the type of guy to carry a gun around the camp, but after that second run through, yeah, I'm not taking any chances. Not with my wife, my daughter, or any of the kids we had tucked inside the trucks. We dragged every fallen log that we could find into a loose barricade around camp, a horseshoe of thick trunks and stumps. It wouldn't really stop a determined driver, but it would force the truck to slow enough for us to react or to shoot. Everybody stayed close to the fire, eyes on the tree line. Shadows were twitching off in the dark, snow drifting from the branches, and every sound promised danger. After dinner, the kids were roasting marshmallows. The adults stood guard, shifting from foot to foot to stay warm. My nerves were completely shot, and then I heard off in the distance an engine revving, low, hunting. "They're back," Jake said quietly, and we all froze. The truck then burst from the trees with no headlights, engine screaming. It fishtailed through the dark, tearing up the snow, circling wildly as if to get its bearings. They didn't know about the logs, at least not yet. "All right, get ready," I said, stepping forward with Jake beside me. The truck turned sharply, lined up with our firelight, and it came straight at camp. It hit that first log at full speed. The front end folded inward with a metallic crunch, steam blasting up in white plumes. The whole vehicle bucked upward, then slammed down into place. The engine kept revving, but the truck was not going anywhere. The doors then flew open on both sides. Both men jumped out screaming that, "You're paying for that! You're paying for all of it!" "Nah," Jake said. "That looks like a you problem." They then took a couple of steps toward us, yelling, still furious. The kids that we put inside the truck started crying. Their wives were yelling at them to be quiet, that it's okay. But I had had enough. I raised that Micro 9 and fired 2 shots into the air. The cracks split off into the night, echoing off the trees, cutting their shouting clean off. "Back the fuck up," I said. "Get in your truck and leave. Step 1 foot closer and you're not going home. You're going in a dusty fucking hole in the ground beside me." Their faces twisted, but fear finally slipped behind their eyes. They laughed it off and staggered back into the crumpled truck. It took them 3 tries to slam the door shut. The engine coughed, whined, and finally limped forward. The shredded front end scraped across the snow as they turned and crawled off into the woods, disappearing the same way they came. None of us really slept that night. 2 days later, when we finally packed up and headed down the mountain, we found their truck pulled off the side of the main road, hood open, windshield cracked, tires bald, and abandoned. We didn't stop. We didn't look inside. Whoever those men were, I hope you stay there. Back in college, I was 20 and broke and willing to believe anyone who said something with confidence. And that's exactly how I ended up on a mountain with 4 other people, half prepared and overly macho, thinking it would be a nice, cheap little getaway. It started with Marissa, my girlfriend at the time. We were in our drafty apartment, eating some leftovers and scrolling on our phones when she got a message from our friend Corey. "Long weekend, Zeke says winter camping is easy mode. Wanna go?" I remember snorting at easy mode in January, but Marissa was already smiling at her phone, already sort of sold on the idea. We didn't have anything else to do, and a road trip did sound better than sitting around campus drowning inside boredom. Corey and her boyfriend James were our usual hangout couple. Late night grocery runs, drinking cheap beer on weeknights, complaining about class loads, and, your standard college friends. The wild card in the mix was Zeke, a new addition. He was older than us by a couple of years, supposedly from Montana, all with these stories about surviving blizzards and outrunning moose. He always wore the same beat-up Carhartt every single time. "Winter's perfect," he said the night that we all met up. "Snow's deep but manageable. Air's clean. No other campers around. You're gonna love it." He talked like this a lot though, with this steady, confident tone that made it easy just to kind of nod along. I didn't know him that well, but Marissa trusted Corey and Corey trusted Zeke. And I guess that was enough to get the rest of us moving. He sketched out this rough plan on a napkin at the bar, drive a couple of hours outside of town, hit a Forest Service road, hike 30 minutes to a clearing by a river, plenty of wood, good shelter from the wind. He even had spare sleeping pads and an extra tent. I'll admit, I got a little uneasy listening to him rattle off everything so perfectly, but maybe that was just my lack of experience. I'd only camped a few times before this and always in decent weather. "Come on," Marissa said later, nudging me. "It'll be fun. We need a break from everything." And so that was that. 5 of us heading deep into the snow on a long weekend, following a guy that we barely even knew. He wasn't entirely wrong. That trip did start off pretty simple. It just didn't stay that way. The drive out there felt really long. Zeke's old truck led the way, rattling confidently through stretches of unplowed road. Marissa and I following behind in my Honda, which slid every few seconds on packed ice. "It feels like we're driving off the map," Marissa said at one point. And she wasn't wrong. The trees were pressing in, snowbanks rose chest high, and the sky turned that pale winter blue that makes everything look Arctic. By the time we reached the trailhead, my nerves were shot. Zeke then hopped out, hands on his hips. "Perfect snowpack," he said. "Couldn't ask for any better." Corey looked at him like he just read some kind of poetry, and James looked exhausted from the drive itself. We quickly strapped on some packs and followed Zeke down this narrow trail through knee-deep powder. The cold stung my nose almost immediately. After 30 minutes or so, we reached the clearing, a flat spot near a slow, dark stretch of river. It was beautiful in that harsh winter catalog kind of way. We went straight to work though, clearing out 10 spots, stomping down drifts, piling up wood to dry. My gloves soaked through immediately and my toes numbed even faster. Zeke, though, seemed made for this. He chopped firewood with clean, practical swings, humming to himself. Corey hovered near him the whole time, laughing at everything he was saying. Marissa seemed to notice too, and she gave me that quick side eye. I nodded. It was weird. Still, by mid-afternoon, camp felt solid. 3 tents were now up, fire was roaring, smoke curling straight into this windless sky. We thawed our gloves over the flames and let ourselves pretend that we were seasoned winter campers out here. We wandered around building this lopsided snowman, climbed on the rocks by the river, and let that day drift by us. It almost felt normal. As the sun dropped behind the trees, the temperature dropped as well. We cooked dinner, burned some sausage and canned chili, and rinsed the dishes with handfuls of snow. Our breath hung in the air around us. And then Zeke reached into his pack and pulled out this bottle of whiskey. "Camping fuel," he said. "Let's warm up." The firelight made that liquid glow golden. Corey howled, threw an arm around him, and took the first shot. James looked uncomfortable but drank anyway. Marissa sipped hers, and then I took the bottle, but flicked the neck behind a log when nobody was looking. I wasn't about to get drunk in sub-zero weather with no cell service, but everybody else here was already sliding downhill fast. The more they drank, the more Corey clung to Zeke, leaning close, brushing his shoulder, whispering things that made him grin. James tightened his jaw and stared into the fire like he was trying to move it with his mind. Marissa kept shifting uneasily beside me. "This is getting messy," she whispered, and I agreed. The jokes got louder, the fire crackled higher, snow drifted in these nice lazy flakes. Zeke went on and on about blizzards that he'd survived, mountains he'd climbed, nights he spent alone in terrain that would kill softer men. And Corey was right there, laughing at every word. James finally stood up and muttered that, "I'm going to bed," stumbled into the tent without looking at anybody else. Marissa and I followed shortly after. When I zipped our tent shut, Zeke and Corey were still up, shoulders touching, still talking. Inside, the cold pressed in from every direction, our breath fogging the air. Marissa curled up close and whispered, "Something bad's brewing." And she wasn't wrong. I must have fallen asleep at some point because the next thing I knew, she was shaking my arm really hard. "Do you hear that?" At first, all I caught was scuffling, thuds, snapping twigs, heavy breathing, then shouting, then a sharp cry followed. I unzipped the tent, freezing air slapping me awake. The fire outside was blazing again, throwing this flickering orange light over the clearing. 3 figures were rolling in the snow, naked: Corey, Zeke, and James. "What the hell?" Marissa said. James was on top of Zeke, swinging wildly, screaming fragments of words that we couldn't quite make out. Corey was clawing at him, sobbing, slipping in the snow, drunk and hysterical. I rushed forward and grabbed James's arm, tried to yank him back, but his whole body shook. I heard them. Thought it was you two, then she wasn't there, she was in his tent." It clicked together in an instant. He'd woken up to the sound of, sex, assuming it was us, realized Corey was gone and followed the noise to Zeke's tent. Then he fucking lost it. Zeke shoved him off, scrambling backwards, yelling to back up, while trying to cover himself with one arm. Corey sobbed even harder. I planted myself between them, yelling for everybody to stop, to breathe, to get their heads on straight, but nobody was hearing anything. For a moment, all 3 just stared at one another, drunk, shaking, and freezing, lit by the firelight. This whole scene in front of me felt unreal. James was the first to break. His breath came out in these ragged clouds. He staggered back when he finally realized he was barefoot and standing in a freezing clearing miles from anywhere else. "You know what?" he said, voice flat. I'm done with all of this. Fuck both of you." He didn't look at Corey, didn't look at Zeke either, just scooped up his clothes from where they landed in the snow and stumbled off toward the trailhead and disappeared in the dark. A minute later, his truck engine fired up, grinding, coughing, then revving. Headlights swept across the trees and vanished. And just like that, he was gone. The silence that followed after that was brutal. Corey collapsed in the snow on her hands and knees, shivering and crying softly. Zeke stood over her, arms wrapped around himself, face rich with anger and embarrassment. Marissa then came up behind me, clutching her coat close, her eyes very wide. "What do we do?" she whispered to me. That was a great question that I did not have an answer for. Eventually, Zeke crouched beside Corey, pulling her up gently. She leaned into him without saying a word, still half sobbing, and he guided her toward the tent. They both disappeared inside without looking back. Marissa and I retreated back to ours, neither of us really sleeping, just kind of laying there in the cold, listening to the fire crack and pop outside, listening for footsteps that never came back. Every time the tent rustled in the wind, I thought James had actually come back, but he didn't. Morning came gray and bitter. The fire had burned down to nothing. The clearing looked wrecked. Footprints everywhere, clothes scattered, streaks in the snow from the fight last night. Corey emerged from Zeke's tent wrapped in a blanket, face puffy, eyes hollow. When she realized what had happened, really realized it, sober, she completely broke. She cried so hard she couldn't breathe. Zeke tried to comfort her, but she pushed him away and just kept sobbing into her palms. Nobody really said much during that hike out, no jokes, no small talk. Just the sound of our boots sinking into the snow and Corey's quiet crying behind us. The whole trip back felt like walking away from a scene of a crime. And I bet you can probably guess this part, but we never hung out with any of them again. Not together, not even separately. It all just kind of ended. Sometimes when the winter hits and I see fresh snow piling up on rooftops, I think back on that weekend. How close everything came to turning fatal. About the moment that James's silhouette crossed those firelit trees with something that looked a whole lot like a gun. He could have killed Zeke, he could have killed Corey. But he didn't. And I'm glad that he didn't.